Chaser, and today I want to talk about my experience of getting sober during COVID. Now, I mean, COVID, I guess, isn't technically over. Who knows? It probably won't be for, I don't know, ever. But I mean, more generally, I'm talking about when it was at pandemic levels, when the world changed. Um, I think about it as alcoholism in the time of COVID. Kind of like love in the time of cholera. Okay, stupid. Anyways, there's an idea that there is not a wrong time ever to get sober. There's never a wrong time. But getting sober during COVID was, let's say, an interesting time. Because here's the thing about COVID, for me. It was the perfect scenario to be the type of alcoholic that I was. It offered everything that I wanted. Every circumstance I could hope for so I can engage in my active alcoholism. COVID was there for it. I was working at the time and then everybody got sent to work from home. Boom, that's perfect for me. I spent years drinking at work, had to, hide and sneak around and guzzle mouthwash and breath mints and put on cologne. And you know what? Now that I'm working at home, I don't got to do any of that. I can basically, when I'm not on a Zoom meeting, drink openly. There was forced isolation. Perfect. I was already doing that, but now I at least had an excuse not to see other people. I didn't have to give fake reasons or block people out. I could just be like, dude, it's COVID. I'm sorry I can't see you. That's why I have to be holed up for the next 30 days just drinking with my dog. Sorry, what can I do? And COVID, it also offered another sense, at least in my scenario and just the general population that I knew, that there was quite a bit of people that started drinking more during COVID. Probably had something to do with, again, isolation and just the change of everything and degrading mental health. And, honestly, there was people that are by no means not alcoholic that were talking about how they would start maybe day drinking or they were drinking more. I don't know, at least from where I'm from, with this in the Midwest area, things were kind of crazy. All of a sudden, I started seeing alcohol sold places that was never sold. I remember there's a grocery store that actually started like taking out part of their salad bar and would just have like the metal trays and everything, and they just started filling it with like shooters, like Fireball. There was Fireball everywhere. At the hardware store, they started selling Fireball. It was just like there was some giant surplus of alcohol or something, like. And everyone, as an alcoholic, I am maybe too aware of these things, but I notice when other people that might be alcoholic are buying, pints at noon or, buying a fifth of vodka on a Monday at like 4:30 p.m. or people just buying shooters, which is, probably on like their lunch break at work. I don't know. I have a sense for these things. And I didn't see it happen very regularly. And I live in a semi-populated urban metro-ish area. Omaha, Nebraska is about as big as it gets. But, anyways, I started seeing that a lot more during COVID. I started I never was in a line full of people around noon where there was more than one person buying booze. A substantial amount of booze, like a bottle of liquor or a case of beer at like noon on a weekday. I would usually never ever see that. All of a sudden I started seeing it all the time. In a way, it was almost like encouraged alcoholism. Like other people started drinking alcoholically. Like, I can't stress it enough. Everything was perfectly set up to be alcoholic and embrace my alcoholism during COVID. Hell, I wish I was on probation when I was in legal trouble during COVID, because all of a sudden they started canceling the drug tests and, the scheduled breathalyzers and even AA meetings. I wouldn't have to go to those, at all, because they had canceled those. That's how you know how bad the pandemic was, in case you didn't know already. But, they don't cancel most AA meetings for anything. They got AA meetings on Christmas. They got it at, especially in cities, all hours of the day. They never cancel those things. Rain, sleet, snow, whatever. And when those were canceled, it was like, man, everything is closed. This would be a perfect time to totally be the alcoholic I'm destined to be. And yet, right when the pandemic hit, I was right in the very beginning, I was in a little stretch of sobriety, and I relapsed. And full disclosure, it had nothing to do with the pandemic. At the time, I don't know, I might have said it as some lame, sorry excuse because I was ashamed of relapsing again, but it had nothing to do with that. But I just tried to get sober again, and just it didn't matter what was going on around me, even though it was something that was affecting everybody, and in a deep manner. It simply didn't matter. I had to get sober. I just picked a very weird time to do it. And I don't mean to be flippant about this, saying it was a perfect time to drink or anything, because in a real sense, it wreaked havoc, especially on alcoholics and addicts. I mean, it doesn't take much wisdom to say this, but it wreaked havoc on everybody. And so you just assume, of course, if it's hard for everybody, it's also hard for alcoholics and addicts. But it was especially hard on them in a way because, for a lot of people, the way they maintain their recovery is with being around other people, whether it's just, in recovery or just friends, just being engaging with other people, going to meetings, some sort of support groups or AA or NA, being active and not isolating. I mean, that might as well just be a list of the 3 things COVID took away immediately. And there was plenty of, there's studies of like the immense declining mental health, and the problems people were facing, but also the immense increase of drug and alcohol use. And COVID shut everything down except for drug dealers. They definitely never take a day off, and it would also not even just raising the general population's use of alcohol and drugs, and not even just being a fertile ground for people's alcoholism and addiction to increase, but it was terrible for people who were in recovery, and not even if they were in a small amount of time when they were in recovery, but I know people personally that I'm in the program with for years that were really struggling, and unfortunately some people that after years had relapsed during that time. I mean, it cannot be said enough how antithetical COVID was to recovery, and it was very strange. When I was new in recovery again, and I had a sponsor, and he was talking with amongst his other friends that were in recovery for a while, and it was very strange to hear how much they were struggling, because I thought of course it's all about me, but I was like I'm struggling day to day. But I assumed that these people with years of recovery, they're just doing fine, but they weren't. I have quite a few friends and acquaintances that work in the child welfare system, and so many of the issues that are involved with that is drug and alcohol use by the parents. And a couple of social workers I know were just so petrified of what this was doing to the parents that were actually showing success, that were staying clean from drugs and alcohol. Because when COVID hit, there was no, outpatient treatment to go to. There was no meetings for them to go to. They weren't being drug tested. There wasn't any of those outside consequences. I mean, the world stopped, and yet it didn't. And parents that were doing well started relapsing. And there was this horrible influx of new issues, because that was another thing, with the child welfare system, is that so many of the reports and the cases start from things that are reported at school, from things other people had seen, but in that isolation, they just fester. And if there's any way I can describe the way COVID was to mental health or alcohol and addiction problems, it is just like having mold somewhere, and then having the humidity go up and the moisture in the air and the darkness set in, and just like everything you could do to make mold grow. If you can imagine mental health and alcohol and addiction problems as that mold, COVID was like that darkness and that humidity and the moisture in the air that just makes it a fertile ground for it to just get exacerbated. And during that time when I was trying to get sober, the funny thing is that, self-absorbed as this may sound, to me, COVID wasn't on my list of the real things I needed to battle with. Because I was having cravings, and I was struggling, and it was very difficult for me to keep in touch with people in recovery, and I really had to find ways to keep active and to get away from isolation, even though that seemed to be all there was. And I had to really go outside the box for a lot of things. I started joining, online support groups. I started, looking into mental health services that could at least be done through telehealth. I really focused on just hobbies or things to keep me active, and I didn't find like some newfound strength because of the pandemic and what was going on. It wasn't like some sort of challenge I saw that I was rising to. For me, I just, in that time frame, I had to do what I had to do to get sober, and it was like, it speaks to a lot about the idea of recovery, the comparison of getting sober during COVID and not in my own case where I was a chronic relapser. It really speaks to the idea of a person's ready to get sober and wants it. Because the thing is that one thing I've learned is that I've never been starving for help in getting sober. I've always had people around me that I knew in the program that were just a phone call away. I had plenty of support. I just rejected it because I didn't want to get sober. And even when I did, I still wasn't ready to make the changes I needed to. And I mean, basically my point is that if you are really on track and you want to get sober and you're ready, and this is a key thing, you're ready to go outside your box, outside your comfort zone and make some changes, you'll do it regardless of what's happening. It's like a lot of people I know that were just newly sober and they had some tragic event happen in their life. And it is, as much as it would make it easier to fall back into bad habits, they were just at a point where they were just like, this doesn't matter. I got to do this. Just like the drug dealers, rain, sleet, or snow, there's no off days. You almost kind of will have a mentality like that it doesn't matter what's occurring around me. I got to find a way out of this. And to be honest, I don't know why that mentality came over me or where it really came from. I mean, the difference is that it was actually more sustained this time around, because I had that before and I was willing to do everything. And then, I don't know, I just lost steam, or I fell into a pit of depression. And then that turned into a pit of self-pitying. And I don't know, this time around, maybe there was some sort of foxhole support I had where I was able to talk to people that were, because they were not only suffering from this same affliction of being alcoholic, but with the pandemic as well, there was this natural sense to try to gravitate towards each other. I mean, there's already such a strong bond you can have with people that suffer from this affliction that has ruined your life, But with that added part of the pandemic and everything that was happening, it forced me to reach out to be like, I can't go to like meetings, and there's a lot of stuff I can't do. I mean, I can't go outside. Right now I'm living basically I did when I was an alcoholic. Like, what do I do? And that sense of panic actually was like pushing me to reach out more. And that was one of the biggest things one of the things I struggled with the most. Was reaching out to people. I couldn't do it. I can't tell you why. They have that saying that when you need it the most, the phone feels like it weighs 1,000 pounds. I just couldn't do it before, but in this sense, I don't know. I felt that like, well, other people are kind of stuck in the same weird boat of they can't go to meetings and they can't do other stuff. So what are they doing? I mean, in a sense, it took away a little bit of the vulnerability that I felt, because that was always a big thing that pushed back from me being able to reach out. It was like, I don't want to bug people with my problems, or they don't really care, or just like I just feel so weak and whiny. I'm just complaining about what's going on in my day and how hard it is just to not drink. Like, I don't want to burden people with that, or I don't want to go through that process. But with this added part about COVID, where I knew they were struggling in some sense too, I wasn't at such a lower level, or at least I felt like that. And that was a big advantage. And this wasn't even something I was conscious of. And up till now, up to this date, this has been by far my longest stretch of sobriety. And it's also been helpful that all these things, that they started coming back. But I really, I didn't do anything special during it. My mindset was with just an extra emphasis on reaching out to people. And I guess during the pandemic, it just felt more acceptable. And I don't, I don't know why I needed that. I mean, who knows what it takes to get some people sober, especially me, because I had plenty of consequences before. It wasn't a matter of that. It wasn't a matter of like whether I was ready for it or not, or it was a good time. I mean, in the pandemic, it was quite possibly the worst time. But that's another thing that I would say, but my experience speaks to as well, is that if you want to get sober, you'll wait forever if you're waiting for the right time. That was something I always did. I always did that. I was just like, man, this is just going to be a tough month with these extra work commitments I have, or man, my relationship right now is on the rocks and we're fighting. Like I got to get through this. And then when things cool down, I'll really focus on recovery and I'll just start going to meetings and I'll quit. There was always that sense that there was going to be this easier time to quit. And it was so silly because it only gets harder the more you continue with your addiction or with drinking. It's progressive. And the other thing is it's life too. There's no guarantee there's going to be this settled down time where it's going to be easier to do something. It's like the idea of like just losing weight. Like I want to, find a better time to lose weight, but so little of that has to do with your circumstances, and it has more to do with like what you're willing to do and what you can do right now. I mean, there's never going to be a better time. And I always had that fantasy, or rather delusion, that, things are just, they're crazy. And for whatever bullshit reason, things are just really tough and difficult right now. I need the booze to kind of get me through this, or I can't make any big changes right now. Like that's something people love to do, change. But I'm not ready for it now. If I just get through this winter, or if I get through this period of work, or if I get through this relationship problem, or if I get through this crisis or this depression or blah, 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 then I'll have this perfect, comfy memory foam pillow of a habitat that's nice and soft and easy, and I'll be ready to get sober. That never comes. At least for me, it never came. And if anything, it was probably just like a subconscious reason to keep pushing things off. Just this imagined time where I'm going to be ready and things will be easier. And for me, it turned out that I picked one of the harder times. I picked the times that, at the very least, that was most prosperous for my alcoholism to reign supreme. I picked a time where it would have been the easiest to continue drinking. I say I picked a time, but if anything, it just goes to show that there's just no time that you pick. There's no setting that you need. It's all if you're ready. And not only if you're ready, but if you're ready in a way to where you'll start and you'll continue and you'll do whatever it takes. Because there's been plenty of times where I'm like, yes, I've been ready, and then a month later, and then I'm not so ready. But that idea of that you just have to have a certain time, place, circumstances, certain mindsets, and something that you gotta wait for, and then you can start. You don't need it. And I want to say this part in terms of COVID and other people that are struggling out there, is that I have the utmost sympathy for people that sobriety and good recovery time they had that was wrecked during the pandemic. I don't want any of this to come off as saying like, you should have done it, or you could have gone through it if I did. To be honest, if I'm going to be fully frank, I don't know why I was able to get through the way I was this time around. Or maybe I do, but that will be in another video. But, if you relapsed, or if you just struggled harder, or if you hit like a new tier of your addiction where you started progressing with more drinking and drug use, and it really ramped up during COVID, and you can't go back, and it's now just increased and it's worse from here on out, my heart goes out to you. I hope you can get help you need. I hope that you'll feel that you're ready to do it. I mean, you don't have to wait to do it, but like I said, with these videos and these talks I want to do, I want to embrace not a lecture approach, and I don't want to embrace a preaching approach. I'm trying to make videos for people that I would feel like if I was still in my days of drinking, and I was watching a video about it. No judgment. I I wish the best for anybody that's still struggling. People that are struggling, whether they're in recovery or they're not, or people that have family and loved ones that are. I wish the best for you. I'm grateful that I was able to make it out and able to start this stretch of sobriety where I don't know where it'll go, but I know today I won't drink. And best of luck of everybody out there. Hey, thanks for watching. Like and subscribe if you enjoyed the content and are interested in hearing more. I'll be producing a lot more videos covering a wide range of topics. And I also have an email I'm going to list below. If you have any personal questions or comments or ideas for topics or just something about your experience. I love any sort of feedback like that. And if you have just general stuff too, just put it in the comments below. Thanks.